Yo, what's good with y'all? It's your boy Nick back with another video. As you see, today we are going to be reacting to the greatest number two option. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so Kyrie Irving has been a hot topic online recently. First, it was people arguing, is he better than Chris Paul all time? Then you had people talking about he's one of the best second options of all time. And when you start phrasing things like that, you're setting yourself up to have to talk bad about Kyrie Irving, and that's not what I want to do. But no, I don't believe he's one of the greatest second options of all time. First of all, some people love the second option discussion as an outlet to diminish certain players, whether it's so they want to have these disingenuous or rage baiting conversations. That's not what we want to do here. But if we do want to just get down to it, the greatest second option of all time is indeed Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant, in my opinion. Maybe
I feel like Kobe is for sure the greatest number two option, especially when he, of course, when he was with Shaq, three-peating and stuff. He for sure
you want to argue Scottie Pippen, which gets into the whole conversation about what is a second option.
Scotty's up there for sure too, but I feel like Kobe's like a better scorer and a better, like, it all depends for real.
It depends on what your main option needs next to him, right? And by the way, in this conversation, Kobe versus Scottie, it's not a conversation, but in general, it does depend on what your main player needs next to him. And that's where I think Kyrie Irving is actually, I don't want to say he's underrated, but I think his role, the difficulty of his task is underrated. Obviously, we all know Kyrie Irving is one of the most skilled players of all time, which kind of makes it even more impressive that you can, I don't want to say minimize, but like you got to operate in tight windows if you're playing with a Luka or LeBron. That level of efficiency, a lot of players don't.
I feel like a lot of people underrate Kyrie. Like, people don't realize how good he plays against with top stars, with people being the main option and him being the number two, still being able to put up numbers and still being able to score, find his way to score with being the second option.
Have that, and I don't mean efficiency in terms of field goal percentage. I mean efficiency in your attempts, efficiency in your movements, in your dribbles. You need to be extremely efficient if you're going to be taking possessions away from a LeBron James or Luka Doncic. And I think a lot of the greatest scorers of all time could not do that at the level of a Kyrie Irving. So I do understand why people want to put him in that conversation, but it also comes back to what are we classifying as a number two? Is it just a go-to scorer? Because we have situations where the number two is the leading scorer. If you look at Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire,
I feel like a number one option is who gets the most touches, who gets the ball in their hands the most. And I feel like that's what LeBron was doing when Kyrie was on the team with him in Cleveland, same with Luka and Kyrie being together. They were getting the most touches aside from Kyrie, and Kyrie was getting the second amount of touches as them.
if you look at Chris Paul, who we've been comparing him to recently, Blake Griffin led them in scoring. Blake Griffin was clearly the number two. And that Clippers team didn't win for a lot of reasons, mainly injuries. They had some healthy years where they blew it against OKC. They were kind of healthy against the Rockets. I know Chris Paul had a hamstring thing, but they were up 3-1, should have won that series. They had their chances, but that duo was very unique because you had the all-time great playmaking point guard that could go get his own bucket for sure. I think Chris Paul is an underrated scorer at this point. But it was unique because the forward was supposed to be like that dominant scorer type, but instead Blake Griffin developed into like this point forward type of player, and they were always missing that one more scorer on the wing. But they were the rare duo where neither one of them was like this dominant scorer. But again, are we talking number two option as a scorer? Because overall as a player, I don't think people are y'all taking Kyrie Irving over prime Blake Griffin? I think that's a fair discussion to have. Again,
Yeah,
I don't know what we're classifying as a number two
I feel like I'm taking Kyrie over Blake on
option. Even if we just look at LeBron teammates, Kyrie Irving is number three for me in terms of second options. Give me AD, give me D Wade. What do we do with?
I'm not taking AD over Kai. I ain't gonna lie. I'll take D Wade. D Wade for sure is better than Kyrie. He's won an MVP. He's done multiple stuff. So I feel like, and then him and LeBron won 2 rings together. So
Someone like a Pau Gasol. Maybe my bias is showing, but I think Pau was right there as well. And I wasn't around for it, but I'm sure the OGs are saying Joe Dumars, Kevin McHale, and we're only talking about players that actually won the championship. I brought up Chris Paul and Blake Griffin just because the comparison recently has been Chris Paul to Kyrie Irving, but we're talking about players that won the championship. If we start getting into players that didn't win it, I know that, kind of moves you down on the all-time number 2 list, but someone like a Kevin Johnson, go look up what he was doing as a second option next to Charles Barkley. And if that was next to LeBron James, maybe he would have been a champion as well. So again, saying that makes it seem like I'm saying, oh, Kyrie Irving was just a tag along, it was easy. No, he beat one of the greatest teams of all time, hit one of the clutchest shots of all time. And again, like I said earlier, it's not easy to do what he did. At the same time, no, it is LeBron James. But when we talk about the second options with the same, kind of archetype or role as a Kyrie Irving, those don't really exist out there too much because those guys are usually number 1 options. Now, I do think people overstate how much Kyrie Irving couldn't lead a team. Of course, early in his career, he's playing on a terrible team. He goes to Boston and is amazing in Boston, really. But he's very, very bad in that one series against Milwaukee. It blows up in Boston for whatever reason, and it's kind of remembered, oh, Kyrie Irving couldn't do it as the number 1 option. Then he goes to Brooklyn, is amazing in Brooklyn as well. Everything that went wrong in Brooklyn, we know that. But that second year in Brooklyn, 27 points, 6 assists, almost 5 boards, 50, 40, 90. Only played in 54 games, but that is the year where there was only 72 games, so not as bad as it seems. And that was probably the best year of his career. So maybe if he stayed with KD and it worked out in Brooklyn, he would be one of the greatest second options of all time because he was doing some other stuff in Brooklyn. It was crazy. And it took me a while to get here, but I kind of want to talk about some players that never really got the opportunity to be a second option. And we've seen it recently with Dame that it's not always as simple as putting 2 great players together because Dame's struggles in Milwaukee are exaggerated for sure, but it wasn't the seamless fit that everyone thought it would be on paper. And going back to Kyrie, I feel like Kyrie would have been a better fit with Giannis. I think Dame is the better number 1 option, but I think Kyrie, again, with his skill set, the limited, efficient, scoring in tight windows, making something happen with 1 or 2 dribbles, I feel like that suits Kyrie more. And I also feel like Chris Middleton probably doesn't get enough credit for what he did in general, but of course on that championship run, I think he deserves more credit for that. But players that never really got a chance to be second options. Now, the second options are usually players that overachieved as number 1 options. And I talk about this guy a lot. I talked about him in my last video, so it was in never got a chance to be a second option.
That's true. DeMar never really got the chance, especially in Toronto. Like, had Jonas Valanciunas and Kyle Lowry. I mean, never really got to be second option. He was always like the number one go-to guy, the number 1 who had the most touches. So
we all, not we, but collectively, the basketball community all kind of just assumed, though, DeMar would be terrible in this situation because he can't shoot threes and you can't put him with this player and this player. We never got to see
like DeMar would be perfect. Like he would be a perfect second option to someone like Joel Embiid, because you got a center that spaces out the floor, that could shoot threes, or even Karl-Anthony Towns because of the fact that he could space out, he could shoot threes and all that stuff. So it would work with DeMar's play style, with him trying to get mid-range shots to have a more spaced out team.
So just how people are assuming he couldn't do it, I'm assuming he could have done it. When you look at who DeMar DeRozan has played with, the best players he's played with, Kyle Lowry, Zach LaVine, LaMarcus Aldridge on the Spurs, Domantas Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox for a handful of games. Those are his best teammates. He's not in that way. Zach LaVine is not a good playmaker. He barely got to play with Fox, who would have been the best, shot creator of this group. And then Sabonis, he had a chemistry with Sabonis, but then They get Zach LaVine, and now it's kind of all jumbled up. DeMar DeRozan has never gotten the opportunity to play off of other people creating for him. He's never gotten the defense tilted toward another way so he could drive to the rim. It's been him as the primary creator, right? Even if you want to say Kyle Lowry was the better player. Even if you want to say Spurs' LaMarcus Aldridge was a better player, which I believe is a fair debate to have. DeMar DeRozan was still the one creating everything. Even if you want to say Zach LaVine was the better player in Chicago, player to run the offense, so he was tasked with that responsibility. He's never played with a player that was clearly a better scorer or a passer than him, right? Because the way I'm saying it is he never had anyone to set him up per se, but even like the other way around, he never played with a Anthony Davis type. You know, he never had someone else that he could get going. So when I think about DeMar and his career, he could have definitely molded his game around other great players.
Yeah.
Any of the great bigs in the NBA. And again, I'm saying DeMar DeRozan should have been a second option. So obviously I'm talking about greats, right? But I think DeMar with Joel Embiid could have fit perfectly. I think DeMar with a Jokic, the DHOs, the mid-range game, the passing, I think could have fit perfectly. We don't think of it that way now because we know DeMar and how he's kind of stuck in his ways, but he never had a reason to change. There was never any other great player for him to have to cater his game around. So no one could have played next to him, but especially young DeMar attacking the rim, DeMar, Chris Paul, I think he could have, like he still could play with a Giannis. I feel like we'd see him adapt to playing with someone like a Giannis, so suited for that role. You know, secondary achieved or achieving for Dennis Rosen was on discussion. The DeMar Kawhi conversation. Of course, Kawhi is better, but it's always brought up like Kawhi just went there and replaced DeMar. Like that's all that happened. That's not what happened. DeMar never played with Danny Green.
I feel like if DeMar had the team surrounding him just like Kawhi did in Toronto, DeMar would have been able to win a ring in Toronto for sure.
That would have been the best defensive 3-and-D wing he ever had. He never played with Marc Gasol. That would have been the best big he ever had. So we could stop right there for a second. 3 things. LeBron is no longer in the conference. The boogeyman has gone out west, right? Most importantly, you add Marc Gasol, a level of playmaking from the 5 position that would have helped DeMar score, spacing from the 5 position that would have helped DeMar score, also would have helped DeMar's playmaking reads, would have added to the playmaking of the team in general. And then you add Danny Green, an elite 3-and-D wing, a player that DeMar never really got to play with. He had guys like CJ Miles, DeMarre Carroll, a very young OG Anunoby. He never had the elite 3-and-D wing next to him. And what did Danny Green do in that year in Toronto? He shot 45% from 3. Imagine DeMar having that next to him. Now again, I don't think DeMar was Kawhi Leonard, but Marc Gasol, Fred VanVleet, and he played 1 year with Serge Ibaka. But that little group right there is not something that DeMar had. It's not like DeMar was failing with that group to win. You get a chance, just couldn't get it done with. Leave that like DeMar. Player that kind of fits in the Chris Paul category where I think this player could have been.
I'm not trying to have the video be long, y'all, so that's why I'm like skipping through it. That's
much
why.
More of a scorer. The type that there's not going to be a lot of examples of a score, a guard scoring off of a forward in that way. But I'm thinking about Gary Payton, who is widely considered one of the best point guards of all time.
Gary Payton for sure could have been like one of the best second options if he would have had someone like Charles Barkley or had someone like that to surround him. Especially after Sean Kemp left, he would have been a good second option. I feel like people underrate Gary Payton from just recognizing him from defense and not his offense, when he was a decent offensive player, like averaging like 20 something. So yeah.
The best defenders of all time, has one of the best nicknames of all time, and of course is always going to be associated with Sean Kemp. I think it's kind of Kemp left in 96-97. The year after, they still win 61 games and lose in the second round to the Lakers. Still a very good team, of course. Gary Payton, Vin Baker, Sam Perkins, Hershey Hawkins, Detlef Schrempf, Dale Ellis, a very, very good team. But the next year, they finally take a step back. They are 25-25 in a 50-game season. But Gary Payton does something that's kind of crazy for the 98-99 season. He takes 5.6 threes a game. Now, it's not like he was a stranger to shooting threes before that.
I didn't even know Gary shot threes like that. 5 threes? Nah, that's crazy. Especially for that time, I didn't even know he was shooting like that.
He was taking 4 the couple years before that, and 0.6, only 24 points per game, which is a career high at this point by a lot. His career high before that was 21.8, but now he's taking 6 threes a game, shooting 34% on them, 24 points, 9 assists, 6 boards a game from a 6'4" All-NBA first team, all 37, and lost in the first round to the Utah Jazz, which is a rivalry that probably should get more love, but no one talks about it because they both lost to Jordan anyway. But Utah versus Seattle was a huge rivalry in the 90s. But all that to say, in the years after Shawn Kemp left, while Gary Payton was still at the tail end of his prime, he became much more of, I shouldn't say much more, but he became more of a scorer. And it makes me wonder, like, could he have been someone that played off of another great player? Like, could he have played off of a Charles Barkley, someone that could help get him going a little bit more? Because most of these buckets were him creating these buckets, and some people don't have the skill set to get assisted buckets, right? That's what makes Kyrie special, that he's one of the greatest mid-range shooter that can get his own Payton. Could he have played next to a LeBron James, and how good could he have been? Could have seen things happen for a reason. He made it to the finals. He was part of a team that was winning 6, but probably could have been one of the greater second options if he was paired with a big or a forward that really helped him get easier buckets. Instead, his entire career was spent as the primary ball handler, setting everyone else. He never really played with playmakers around him. I know I brought up Kevin Johnson earlier, who I believe is underrated. I believe should be in the Hall of Fame. But I feel like Charles Barkley, Gary Payton would have been a crazy duo. Would have been kind of reminiscent of a LeBron. Payton is how great Charles, I know the difference is, but I'm saying, like, in terms of the roles on the team, I feel like it could have been a different version of that. And again, of course, it's not saying that Gary Payton wasn't good as a number 1 option. The proof is in the pudding. He was amazing. I just think he probably could have thrived in that second option role. And I just now realized how long this video is going to could have missed, but I'm wondering, does he fit more?
Gil would have been a good second option, but I feel like he was better with the ball in his hands. But even as being a second option to like a big man, like how Kobe was with Shaq, I feel like he would have been a good second option.
I think he fits more the Dame than the Kyrie, and that's else, right? If his career, right? But I mean it like Gilbert Arenas is much more of things are on his time. When you're the second option, things can't be on your time. I don't think you get the best of a Gilbert Arenas putting him next to another elite shot creator the same way you get the best Kyrie Irving. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but there's other players that I don't even want to bring up because I don't feel like they were like a Tracy McGrady. I don't feel like it's even worth saying. I'm sure he could have figured it out.
I feel like if Tracy had like a better surrounding team, him and Kobe, like it would be a conversation of who's better between him and Kobe. I feel like Kobe, even though Kobe didn't pass that much, I feel like he probably was a better playmaker, be able to create a shot better than Tracy, but it would for sure be a conversation between them two.
Out as a number 2 option, but I feel like he was great enough to be a number 1 option. I don't feel like, oh, he was suited to be a number 2 option. I just feel like he had an unfortunate career and didn't get it done as a number 1 option, but I think he was a good number 1. Like, I feel like he could have been a championship level number 1. Then you got someone like Carmelo, who I struggle with because we all think of Carmelo as like this volume 3-point shooter, which really wasn't the case until very late in with such play. If you guys want to go watch, but more on the move than like a Carmelo. If you're the number 2, you can't just stop, right? I feel like DeMar could have been coming off of pin downs, flying off of DHOs, cutting back door, catching lobs in a way that Melo probably wouldn't have been. But obviously Melo's a better number 1 option. All of it is subjective. We started with Kyrie Irving, who, again, like I said earlier, I believe his role to get in, get out, to be a fit can do at the level that Kyrie does it.
Yeah. Shout out to this dude for a good video for me to react to. Um, yeah, that's it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. Make sure y'all like and subscribe, and share to y'all friends who y'all think would like watching these videos. And yeah, I'm out.